The story begins in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Amityville, Long Island, where the stately Dutch colonial at 112 Ocean Avenue stood as a picture of middle-class prosperity, with its distinctive gambrel roof and eye-like quarter moon windows. The house projected an air of comfortable normalcy that would soon be shattered by one of the most gruesome crimes in New York history and the alleged supernatural horrors that followed. On the cold night of November 13, 1974, the house became the scene of an unspeakable tragedy. Ronald Booch DeFeo Jr., the 23-year-old eldest son of the DeFeo family, methodically murdered his entire family as they slept, using a .35 caliber Marlin rifle. He first shot his father, Ronald Sr., and mother, Louise, in their master bedroom, then proceeded down the hall to execute his siblings. 18-year-old Dawn, Hugh may have awakened and tried to flee as evidenced by her face-down position. 13-year-old Allison, the artistic middle child. 12-year-old Mark, the quiet animal lover. And 9-year-old John, the baby of the family. The brutality was compounded by the fact that all 6 victims were shot in their beds, completely defenseless against the brother and son they had loved. What makes the DeFeo murders particularly chilling is the calculated aftermath. Butch carefully cleaned up, disposed of evidence, and went about his normal routine, even stopping at a local bar called Henry S., where he casually chatted with friends, before returning home to discover the crime scene and call police. His initial claims of a mafia hit quickly unraveled under police scrutiny. There were no signs of forced entry. Family's valuables were untouched, and most damningly, all 6 victims had been shot with the family's own rifle. Forensic evidence placed the time of death around 3:15 a.m., a timestamp that would later take on ominous significance. At trial, Butch's defense team mounted an insanity plea, claiming he heard voices commanding him to kill. Psychiatrists testified about his extensive drug use and paranoid delusions about his family conspiring against him. The jury rejected this defense, convicting him on 6 counts of second-degree murder in November 1975. Judge Thomas Stark sentenced him to 6 consecutive life sentences, calling it the most depraved crime in Suffolk County history. DeFeo would spend the rest of his life in prison, dying at age 69 in March 2021. Having never expressed genuine remorse for his actions. 13 months after the murders, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue was purchased by George and Kathy Lutz for $80,000, a bargain price considering the home's size and waterfront location. A young couple, newly married with 3 children from Kathy's previous marriage, were aware of the home's grisly history, but believed they could make a fresh start. They moved in on December 18, 1975, little suspecting they would flee in terror just 28 days later, abandoning nearly all their possessions. The paranormal activity reportedly began almost immediately. During a house blessing ceremony, Father Ralph Pecoraro claimed to hear a deep, guttural voice command him to get out. Shortly after, he developed painful blisters on his hands that resembled stigmata. The Lutz's youngest daughter, Missy, began talking about an imaginary friend named Jody, who took the form of a demonic pig-like creature with glowing red eyes. Family members reported being violently awoken each night at exactly 3:15 a.m., the timestamp of the DeFeo murders, by unexplained noises throughout the house. George Lutz underwent the most disturbing transformation. Once an easygoing, loving stepfather, he became increasingly irritable and obsessed with the home's fireplace, where he claimed to see faces forming in the soot. He began physically resembling Ronald DeFeo Sr., growing a similar mustache and adopting mannerisms eerily reminiscent of the murdered patriarch. Kathy reported waking to find George's body covered in scratches and bite marks with no plausible explanation. On several occasions, she claimed to witness him levitating above their bed, his face contorted in a rictus of terror. The house itself seemed to turn against them. Its unexplained cold spots made their breath visible in rooms with functioning heating. A foul, rotting stench would appear without source and vanish just as suddenly. Greenish-black slime oozed from walls and ceilings despite no plumbing issues. Most disturbingly, swarms of flies would materialize inside the home during winter months, when no insects should have been active. The final breaking point came on January 14, 1976. After a particularly harrowing night where doors slammed on their own and unseen forces seemed to stalk them through the halls, the Lutzes gathered their children and fled with only the clothes on their backs, and never returned to collect their belongings, eventually filing an insurance claim for over $20,000 in abandoned possessions. The case gained national attention when paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren became involved. The famous demonologists claimed the house was a portal to hell, built on a Shinnecock Indian burial ground where a mass suicide had occurred centuries earlier. They conducted psychic investigations, producing photographs they claimed showed demonic faces in the walls and recordings of growling voices. The Warrens' involvement lent credibility to the Lutzes story and helped spawn J. Anson's 1977 bestseller, The Amityville Horror, which in turn inspired the iconic 1979 film starring James Brolin and Margot Kidder. However, skepticism about the haunting has persisted over the decades. Butch DeFeo's defense attorney William Weber admitted in later interviews that he helped the Lutzes embellish their story to bolster his client's insanity defense. Subsequent owners of the house reported no paranormal activity, and journalist Rick Osuna's investigative book, The Night the DeFeos Died, presented compelling evidence that the haunting was largely fabricated. The Lutzes themselves faced accusations of financial motivation, having sold their story rights before the book's publication, yet the legend endures. The house, now renumbered to 108 Ocean Avenue to deter curiosity seekers, remains a pilgrimage site for paranormal enthusiasts. Multiple film adaptations and documentaries continue to revisit the case, each adding new layers to the mythology. Whether one believes the haunting was real, a psychological manifestation of trauma, or an elaborate hoax, the Amityville Horror stands as a fascinating case study in how true crime and supernatural lore can intertwine to create an enduring discree. At its core, the power of the Amityville legend lies in its foundation of verifiable horror. The very real murders of 6 innocent people by a family member they trusted. The subsequent haunting narrative, whether factual or fabricated, forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of evil, the power of place, and our collective fascination with the boundary between this world and whatever may lie beyond. This intersection of documented violence and alleged supernatural terror is what has cemented 112 Ocean Avenue-S place in the annals of American folklore, ensuring that nearly 50 years later, we're still asking, could a house really be evil?